Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Hannah, leave it. Good girl. Good job. Um, leave it. Hannah, Hanidi, leave it. Good girl. Good job. So as you can see, I am in the throes of training a new dog. Sock is fine. Sock is healthy. For Sock. And you guys don't understand that. I just realized I've been doing a horrible job of chronicling me and Sock's journey. You don't understand what I mean by Sock is healthy for Sock. So let me start at the very beginning. Not a bad place to start from what I hear. But when my husband and I were newly married, I started showing pretty big symptoms of PTSD. I would freak out, random things become very irritable. I would get very sidetracked when I would come in contact with certain stimuli. When men hugged me, I got very uncomfortable, and that's because of why I have PTSD. One of the reasons. I actually have CPTSD, which compacts through trauma. So I started showing more and more symptoms. And I went from, oh, there's absolutely nothing wrong with me at all whatsoever, to, no, I don't have anxiety problems. I'm just quirky. And then to, okay, I might have some anxiety problems, to, I probably have PTSD. It's such a long journey. Okay, so we were starting to figure out more and more that I had PTSD. And I started watching YouTube videos on service dogs and training them and working them. And apparently this is a very common thing for new service dog handlers, is to go from, oh, I have no problems, to owner training a service dog. Which is exactly what I did. So I decided it was an excellent idea to go ahead and owner train my own service dog. Mainly because I wanted a puppy. Not a good reason to get a service dog, guys. Do not do that. If you just want a puppy, talk to your partner. Make sure it's a good, responsible, reasonable thing for you to do at that moment. Don't do what I did and lie and manipulate in order to get a puppy. It's not a good thing. It's a really crappy thing to do. And that was one of the moments that I very much regret. So don't do that. Be honest with yourself and with your partners. So I told Nick, I was like, I want a puppy. He goes, no, we can't do a puppy right now. We have way too many dogs. And I was like, okay, what if it's a service dog? And then he's like, you need a service dog. So yeah, okay, if you want to get a service dog and work a service dog, then we can get a puppy. And I said, cool, that's all I needed. And so I went on Craigslist. No one said I'm the smartest one here. I went on Craigslist and I found a Chihuahua mix litter. And I have a thing for Chihuahuas, Chihuahua Dachshunds. I love them. And so I was like, I want another Chihuahua, because I had one at that moment. She was just turning 13. And I'm a very superstitious person. And so 13 for me, I was worried about what was going to happen to her. And so I was like, I want to get another Chihuahua. And my husband's like, fine. Whatever is going to work for you is going to work for you. And I said, cool. Awesome. So I went on Craigslist and I found a Chihuahua mix litter about 2 hours away from us. I was like 2.5 hours away from us. And so we went in the car, and of course I texted them. I was like, are these still available? And they're like, yes. And I was like, cool. And they're like, it's a $15 rehoming fee. I was like, I got $15. So we got in the car and we drove all the way down. It was like 2.5 hours. And we got there, and this lady brings out, well, she explains what happened, which, knowing what I know, I would still get Sock again, but I would not get her as a service dog. I would have gotten her as a pet. Maybe an at-home service dog. She did do work really, really well for a little bit, but then COVID hit, and I should have just retired her after COVID. Leave it. So we get Sock, and she's very sickly. But they explained to us before we got her, I jumped around again, they explained to us that they are a backyard rescue, meaning if a dog is walking by the street and they notice that it doesn't have a home, they will actually take that dog in and they'll feed it, but they won't feed it well, and they won't fix them. They're intact how they find them. They just feed them food and give them water, but it was like human food, so not great. And so we get Sock and we bring her home, and she's got this giant milk belly. They said that she was about 8 weeks old. Based on her birthday, that matches, but developmentally she was so far behind. She was so tiny, and she was not well. We were pretty sure she had worms, but we did a fecal test and she didn't. But the symptoms that we were seeing were a lot like worms. And the fecal test doesn't necessarily test for every type of worm. So we did a fecal test at multiple vets, and it always came back negative. And they would deworm her anyways. But they carried her around everywhere, and they hadn't even introduced her to solid food. She was still on mom's teat. Mom had no inclinations of weaning at all. So they would carry the puppies everywhere, and they carried 8 puppies out. And I didn't think anything of it, but there was a German Shepherd male, and he was about Sock size, maybe a little bit bigger, but he was very stunted. And so I was like, okay, whatever. And I really didn't think anything of it. He couldn't get out of the fence. None of the dogs can get out of the fence. I brought Lily with me. He tried, but he couldn't get to her. And so they handed me the puppies over the fence, and I had Lily check each one, and she didn't like any of them but Sock. Sock was the only one she showed any interest towards. And so we took Sock, and we gave them their $15. And they're like, you sure you don't want another one? And we're like, no, just the one. And so we took her home. We had so many tests done. We had blood work. We had liver things. When she got fixed, we had all the lab work done. We also had her teeth cleaned. But we went above and beyond for her. And she really did well for a long time. She started reacting just before COVID hit. And we went through PetSmart training before we moved out of Bakersfield. We did PetSmart training. Then we moved out of Bakersfield and into the high desert. And me being away from the stress of Bakersfield seemed to have really calmed her down and made her work so much better. Her reactions went away. She was very, okay, let's do this. Let's get this done. She essentially became my dream service dog for a good few months, and then COVID hit. And I don't plan on monetizing this, so I don't care. But then COVID hit, and Sock tried to self-retire, just like many service dogs in the time did. I think, and of course I didn't look up a stat. This is just me thinking back on all of the posts and all of the videos that people in the service dog community made around that time, and I would probably say about a quarter of the United States service dog population just went kaput, because the dogs were retiring themselves. And what are we as owners going to do? Say no? your dog is telling you they're no longer comfortable with working. And as service dog handlers, that's one of the things that we are constantly keeping an eye out for, so that way we can make sure that our dogs are comfortable while they're working. Which is why it cracks me up so much when people are like, oh, service dogs are slaves. It's like, no. In their way, they do give consent. We do not work dogs that do not want to work. And so Sock started trying to retire herself. And so I was like, okay, we could just retrain. That's not a big deal. So we signed her up for a local dog trainer, and he essentially went, this dog does not have the right temperament and personality to be a good service dog. I don't understand how you did it, but you did it. Like, she's working. I don't understand how, but she is. He goes, I, however, would look into getting another dog and retiring her early. And I was like, well, we wanted to do a slow retirement from an early age anyways. And she was getting ready to turn 4 at the time, I think. Yeah, because she just turned 5. And so, so we're like, okay, well, we'll start trying to retire her. But I need a new dog. Obviously, I can't work no dog. And he goes, why not look into golden retrievers? And this is nothing against you folk who work golden retrievers. You're excellent dogs. They're the reason that they're number 1 in the service dog community. For me, I like my dogs to look different. And there are ways to still get a responsibly bred golden retriever, or like a good temperamented rescue, and still have it work really, really well while like dyeing them with pet friendly dyes. I totally get that. I didn't want to go that route. I'm not 100% against purebreds. I just think that when you pure breed over and over and over again, eventually you're going to run into genetic problems. And while golden retrievers have some problems, they don't have as many as potentially a mutt. And that's another thing with purebreds, is you can actually, if you know their bloodlines and you know how they're bred and they're health tested before breeding, all things that can also happen with mutts, then you could actually make sure that you have lower risk of certain genetic diseases. And I was all for it, but not for me. I wanted to have a dog mainly because I was starting to pass out randomly. I wanted to have a dog that if I were to pass out and my dog were to get away, then people would look at my dog and go, I recognize that dog. That dog looks weird. No one else has walked in with a dog like that. It must belong to this person. Let's look for her. And so, not the greatest of reasons, but what are you going to do? Hindsight's 2020. For those wondering, I plan on my next service dog being a Airedale, purebred Airedale. I love them. They're amazing. And they have the doodle with none of the calories. So, but my trainer then goes, well, you don't want a golden retriever. I was like, no, because they're a dime a dozen. You look at one golden retriever and you've seen them all. It's not that much of a difference. And he goes, okay, well, what about a golden doodle? I was like, I hate doodles. Again, don't judge me harshly just yet. You haven't heard the rest of my story. So I was like, I hate doodles. And he's like, but why? They're great. Poodles are the smartest breed of dog worldwide. Like, scientifically, it has been proven that they are number 1. And he goes, mixed with something else, you can have a really good dog. And I was like, or you can have a backyard bred piece of shit. And he's like, no, I breed doodles. And I was just like, my foot sure does taste good. Mind you, I was trying to ingratiate myself with him because I didn't know what I was doing. I'd only trained Sock and I needed help with her. And so I was like, I don't want a doodle. I want a Dalmatian. And he's like, absolutely not. If you get a Dalmatian, I will not help you with training it. And I was like, okay, all right. I'm fine with that. I train Sock on my own. I can do a Dalmatian. And my husband's like, no, we need help. You're not doing a Dalmatian. And I was like, okay, well, then what can we do? And wouldn't you know it, my dog trainer also breeds doodles. He breeds Bernedoodles as well as Aussie doodles. I might be mistaken on that one. I don't. Border doodles. Border collie poodle mixes. And he's like, what do you need? Do you need something about sock size? Because I breed that. Do you need something bigger? And I was like, well, I need mobility help, so I'm going to need something bigger. And he's like, okay, I have Bernedoodles. And I was like, I've never heard of Bernedoodle. It has doodle in the name. I don't like doodles. I'm not about that life. And he's like, I'll give you a discount because I like you. And I was like, all right, I'm listening. Oh, sweet young dumb me from earlier this year. So we go, okay. He goes, I'm planning on breeding close to Christmas time next year. And I said, okay. And mind you, this is a whole 2 years ago. He goes, I'm planning on doing it next year. I said, okay, all right, cool. We can save up for that. About how much are you thinking of selling them for? And at the time, he said like $2,500. And I was like, okay, all right. I'm not happy about paying that much. I have horses. I've never paid that much for a single horse. So, okay, I guess this thing's going to save my life, so it's going to be worth it. And because Sock had saved my life so many times. Oh, so many times she'd saved my life. So that was when I started doing research into Bernedoodles. And I was like, oh, everyone's a Bernedoodle lover. Everyone's a doodle lover. Okay. And so much propaganda about doodles on the interwebs. Look, just like any other mutt, and I'm sorry, your doodle is a mutt. My doodle is a mutt. They are a purebred and a purebred mixed together. That does not make them a designer breed. That makes them a freaking expensive mutt. That being said, I bought a freaking expensive mutt. Oh, no. I shouldn't have done that last one. Too crazy, and now I'm dizzy. Okay. So, we bought Hino. We did not pay $2,500 for her. We paid $3,000 for her. And put myself back on rent. And that would eventually get us kicked out of that house. Smart decisions being made all around. So he calls us up in May of 2022. And he's like, hey, my dog had her puppies. And I was like, you weren't supposed to breed her until close to Christmas time. Like, we were planning on buying the puppies in Christmas time. And he's like, yeah, I had more demand, so I just went ahead and bred her. And she just gave birth on the 9th. And I was like, okay. All right. So he sends us pictures of the dogs that passed his temperament test because I learned my lesson. I didn't though. He sent us pictures of different puppies that passed his temperament test. And there were 3 of them. So I didn't even look at the other puppies. I just looked at these 3 Bernedoodle puppies. And there was 1 female and 2 males. I have better luck with females. However, with proper temperament testing, it does not necessarily matter because they all have a good temperament starting off. Mind you, a good temperament can still have strengths and weaknesses. That was something I didn't consider. And that was something we did not test for. So I didn't do my own temperament testing, and I really should have. And I tried to, but he wouldn't let me put the dog down on the ground. So I couldn't test her myself. And in hindsight, huge red flag. ginormous red flag. And so we chose, it was between Hinata and a puppy that we called Sasuke. He didn't have a name, they just called him by their collar colors. And he was orange collar male. So we called him Sasuke. Although if we were going to take him, I would have named him Wilford. So we did not take Sasuke. Although I loved him's had eyebrows. And I absolutely adored him, but there was some things going on behind the scenes, and I wasn't opposed to Hino. Like, I'm the one that's, okay, it's between these two. I didn't even like blue collar male. Well, I like puppies. There's no such thing as a puppy I don't like, in my opinion. He just wasn't in the running. And so my husband was like, I really like Hinata. And I was like, okay, but I really like Wilford, Sasuke. And he's like, no. I like Hino. And I was like, I don't dislike Hino. I like them about equally, which was what ended up making the decision. Was she had stronger hind legs than he did. And she had a broader chest than he did. Both things that will come in handy with mobility. And so I was like, okay, let's go with her because this is better for mobility and it's better for DPT. And so we ended up going with her. We paid our $3,000, no papers. We got this little booklet that said, congratulations on your puppy, name blue collar female. And we picked her up. They had bathed her and she was ready to go home. So we took her home, and big old cuddle bug, just ginormous cuddle bug. And Sock immediately was, no, just absolutely not. How dare you? And so that was my back was out, but I hadn't started the dizzy spells yet. And so, leave it. So, we got Hino, we brought her home. I had back pain, so I couldn't do very much training, but I did try to do some. Like, I was pretty on it about getting her on a schedule. So, in the mornings, I would take her out of her crate, because we were crate training this time, because we didn't crate train with Sock, and 11 cast members at Disney can tell you Sock is not good in a crate. And the separation anxiety on that girl. So we started crate training immediately. Day one, we brought her home. It was time for nap. She went in the crate to take nap. So in the mornings, I would take her immediately out to go potties. If I didn't already have my shoes on, I would put my shoes on before I took her out of the crate. If I didn't already have her leash in hand, which usually we put it on top of the crate, then I would grab it first and then take her out of the crate. So I would take her out of the crate immediately outside to go to the bathroom, where we would wait for her to take 2 poops and 1 potty. And then we would bring her back in. We would give her breakfast in her crate. And when she was done eating, we would take her back outside just to check to see if she had to go pooty. Normally she had to go pooty, not poopy. And then we would bring her in, and I would do some enrichment playing with her, meaning I would do normal doggy games, but they always had an ulterior motive. So while for her it appeared that we were just playing with toys, and we were playing with, oh, Hinata, come here, good girl, we were loading her name, and we were starting the building blocks of retrieval. So it all appeared to be fun and games for her, but she was actually doing training. And so around noon, we would take her outside to go potties, because it's after playing. So we would take her outside to go potties. Normally, she would go poopy at this point. Then we would put her back in her crate, give her a third of her food, because we would split her food into 3 different feeding times. So we would give her a third of her food at breakfast, we would give her a third at lunch, and we'd give her the last third at dinner, using some of each third for training in between. And so we would give her her third, put her down for a nap, and then we would leave the room. And huge blowouts. My gear maker got a lot of messages like, how do you do this? So did the trainer. And so we got really into the groove of that routine. And when she was alone in the house, not like alone, but when she wasn't in a crate and we weren't playing, then she was, even when we were playing, she still had a leash on. So that ways I can grab her and correct her no matter what she was doing. And it would be instantaneous. Well, not instantaneous, but it would be quick. So that ways she would learn what behaviors are okay and which are not. So we got to the point where she was okay in her crate. She had learned to sit really early on. She was learning lay down. We didn't even teach her how to shake. She just came knowing how to shake. And I asked our trainer and he's like, I didn't teach her that. So she just knew shake straight out the packaging. I don't know what that was about, but cool. We use it. And we also started grooming pretty early on. So I would sidle up next to her and I would hold on to her paws and I would just, play with the Dremel and not really take anything off, just touch it so that she'd get used to the vibration. Sometimes I would flip it around to the battery part. I'm putting my camera on my grooming kit, so I'm using it as a study. But this is my Dremel. I do my grooming on my own. Nope. And I have two of these. So this is my Dremel. So what I would normally do is I would go like this and I would just trim the nail. Or if I didn't want to do that, I would turn it on high and I'd flip it around and I'd put her paw on the battery part so that way she would get used to the vibration. Because she is a very hairy dog and I knew that I would have to shave her pads as well. And you don't think about it, but you do feel vibration when trimming. And so I try to get her used to the sounds and the feelings, the sensations of all of that. So we started pretty early on. Let's see, we brought her home in June, July, August. So literally at the end of August, so it's about a month and a half, I started having random dizzy spells. We still don't know why. I've done so many tests. It's nothing neurological that we know of. I do have some problems with my heart, but we don't know what their correlation to my dizziness issues are. I went to the otolaryngologist, or ear, nose, throat, and she said my ears are perfect. They're really good. She goes, pressure's good. It's where it needs to be at. But she did diagnose me with benign perioxysmal positional vertigo, meaning I have crystals. Everyone has crystals in the back of their neck that connect to the ears. And when you move, that tells you what position you're in. And when those crystals become lodged or stuck, they can actually cause vertigo issues. And normally through exercise and medication, while it doesn't go away, you can have flare-ups, but for the most part, you can also remain in recession for a while. I have been having random dizzy spells for almost a month, because we are now in May as I'm filming this, the very beginning of May, and Hannah's birthday's in about 4 days, I think. 5 days. Her birthday's in 5 days. And I'm still having dizzy spells, and we don't know what's causing them. So at the beginning, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't cook, I couldn't clean, I couldn't really stand. I didn't have a walker. I do now, but I didn't have a walker. I was slow to start using my cane because I didn't want to. I need to clean my camera really quick, so let me pause here and clean my camera. Okay, so I couldn't do much, and even taking the dogs out to go use the restroom, I needed help. and I didn't always take them out. And that house that we moved out of was disgusting. I'm not going to lie, it was disgusting. And so we got kicked out and we moved our horses. Actually, sorry, they're not ours. We did legally sell our horses to our friend. Um, we did have a buyback clause in our selling contract, but they are no longer ours. Um, and so, although we do visit them fairly often, and we do help financially with their care, but they do not belong to us. We have not bought them back, and we don't intend on buying them back until Sierra wants to sell them. So that happened, but we moved out, and we moved into a nice little trailer, nothing big, nothing fancy, but we moved there. And we've been living there with our dogs. We have 5 dogs. We have Dexter, who is separated from the rest because he is dog aggressive. We have Sakura, we have Hinata, and we have Ducky, and we have Scoobert. It's a lot of dogs, and we do live in a trailer. We are trying to save up to buy a house right now. So what we can spare after rent and such, we've been trying to save up to buy a house. So that happened. But since I've gotten Hino and we've started training her, now she's starting her journey on public access training. And so as we've been spending more time with Hino, Sock has been slowly retiring herself more and more, which is fine. We planned on her retiring, but I was planning on her retiring after Hino's psychological work was done. I mean, like training wise. No, Sock decided now. I'm retiring now. So this is my first overnight trip because we had to bring our friend to her new job, just orientation. So Nick and I decided, hey, we could use a little vacation. And so we're up in Bellflower and about an hour or so away from where our friend's job is, but it's closer than what we were. And that was when my husband is like, Sock's trying to retire herself. And I was like, yes. He goes, this would be a really, really good opportunity for you to spend some bonding time with Hino as a handler service dog team, not as a pet and pet mom team. And I was like, you're right. Of course there were some psychological things that I was like, I don't want to do this. Sock is the only service dog I've ever known. But just because something is hard doesn't necessarily mean that it's the wrong thing to do. And so while Sock is trying to retire herself, it's not fair for me to continually make her work when she's no longer comfortable in that position. So we are training Hino, who has very, very poor impulse control. She has very poor distraction training because if I'm not going anywhere, I can't train her for those things. So those are all things that I plan on capturing us actually working through. You may not agree with any of my training methods. You may absolutely love my training methods. I don't know. And if you guys have any better ways of doing it, of course, we're going to listen. We're going to try them out. This is my long about way of saying, hey, I have a new service dog. I'm sorry that I didn't do very well on filming me and Sock. I know that a lot of service dog handlers have problems with very, very rare points of reaction, and my channel could have really helped. And I'm sorry that I didn't have the forethought to film. However, I plan on remedying that with Hino. As you heard, Hino does have some reaction towards her territory. I plan on training her out of that. She has really, really bad impulse control. She has really bad patience. Her heel's not great. We've had to use gentle lead on her a couple of times because I just needed her to calm down enough for me to teach her. And I'm on a walker. I have trouble walking with my walker, although I am more mobile than I used to be. So I hope you guys join me as I little by little train Hinata to be a good service dog.